bullet tore through Mama Birdie's shoulder before Jessie could even scream. 1 second, she was just a homeless kid shivering in a corner booth at the Iron Horse, counting the hours since her last meal and trying to disappear into the torn vinyl seats. The next glass exploded everywhere, and an old woman in a leather vest collapsed in a spreading pool of blood 3 feet away from her. Jessie had 2 choices in that frozen moment. Run like she'd been running her whole life, the way she'd run from 7 different foster homes and a dozen different dangers. Or crawl through that broken glass and drag a stranger to safety, even though helping people had only ever gotten her hurt before. What she didn't know was that the stranger had been carrying her photograph for 8 years, waiting for this exact moment. What she couldn't have known was that saving this woman would unlock secrets her mother had died protecting, would bring 98 bikers to their knees, and would finally answer the question that had haunted her for 5 years. Who was Jessie Cole? And why had someone murdered her mother in a stairwell while a 9-year-old girl watched from the shadows? But that moment was still 3 days away, and Jessie had to survive those 3 days first. The rain hadn't stopped for 72 hours straight. Jessie Cole pressed herself deeper into the concrete alcove beneath the I-94 overpass, watching water cascade off the highway above like a curtain separating her from the rest of the world. Traffic rumbled overhead, 18-wheelers hauling goods to places where people had homes and families and reasons to keep going. Down here in the darkness, she had none of those things, her stomach cramped with a familiar emptiness. 46 hours since her last real meal. The gas station hot dog she'd bought yesterday with $8 earned, carrying groceries for an old lady, didn't count. That was survival. That was shame wrapped in processed meat and a stale bun. She was 14 years old, though the hardness in her eyes made most people guess 17. 3 months on the streets had aged her in ways that couldn't be measured in days or weeks. 3 months of sleeping with one eye open, of never trusting anyone who smiled too wide, of learning which alleys were safe and which ones swallowed girls her age and never gave them back. But it was the 5 years before that which had really changed her. 5 years since the stairwell. 5 years since her mother's blood had soaked through her sneakers, while 2 men with snake tattoos walked away laughing. 5 years of foster homes and social workers and people who said they cared but never did. 5 years of running from a memory that ran faster. Jessie pulled her hood tighter against the rain and checked her backpack. Everything she owned in the world fit inside. 2 shirts, both too big, bought from Goodwill with money she'd found in a parking lot. 1 pair of jeans with a rip in the knee. Clean underwear she'd stolen from a laundromat because sometimes survival meant breaking rules. A cracked lighter that barely worked. And wrapped in a plastic bag to keep it safe, a single photograph of her mother, Evangeline Cole, smiling at a camera 9 years ago when the world still made sense. Her fingers found the locket hanging around her neck. Silver tarnished now with a wolf's head engraved on the front. The chain was kinked from 5 years of constant wear, the metal warm against her skin, even in the cold. Her mother had given it to her on her 9th birthday, just 2 weeks before she died. "Don't ever take this off, Valentine," Ava had said, using the nickname only she was allowed to use because Jessie had been born on February 14th, and her mother had always called her my little Valentine. "And don't open it until you're grown enough to understand." Jessie had asked what that meant. What was inside? What would she need to understand? But Eva had just smiled that sad smile she wore sometimes, the one that made her look older than 32, and kissed Jessie's forehead. "You'll know when the time comes, baby girl. You'll know." 2 weeks later, Ava was dead, and Jessie had never opened the locket. Some part of her was afraid that opening it would break the last connection she had to her mother. Another part was afraid of what she might find inside. She touched it now the way she always did, when the fear got too big to carry alone. "I'm trying, Mama," she whispered to the rain in the darkness and the ghost that followed her everywhere. "I'm trying to survive." The rain picked up. Water pooled in the alcove, seeping through her worn-out sneakers. She needed to move, find somewhere drier, but moving meant exposing herself. And exposed girls on Detroit streets learned hard lessons fast. Jessie had learned to make herself invisible. She'd cut her dark hair short with a pair of scissors, stolen from a pharmacy, making herself look more like a boy than a girl because boys were safer. She wore baggy clothes 3 sizes too big, hiding the fact that her body was starting to change in ways that attracted the wrong kind of attention. She kept her eyes down, her shoulders hunched, her presence as small as possible. Invisible girls survived. Pretty girls disappeared. She'd learned that lesson in her 4th foster home when her foster father's eyes had started lingering too long on her developing chest, when his hands had found excuses to touch her shoulder, her back, her knee, when he'd started coming into her room at night with whiskey on his breath and intentions in his eyes that made her skin crawl. Jessie had run that night, grabbed her backpack, climbed out the window, and never looked back. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of sleeping rough, of eating from dumpsters, of avoiding police and social workers who would just send her back into the system. Back to people who saw her as a burden or worse, as something to use. Better invisible and hungry than visible and hurt. The rain showed no signs of stopping. Jessie's teeth chattered. Hypothermia was a real risk, the kind that killed homeless people every winter in Detroit. She'd seen it happen. An old man named Charlie, who used to share his spot under the Woodward Avenue Bridge, had fallen asleep one January night and never woken up. The cops had zipped him into a black bag like he was garbage, like his life hadn't mattered at all. Jessie refused to end up in a black bag. She shouldered her backpack and stepped out into the rain. The shock of cold water hitting her face made her gasp, but she pushed forward, head down, following Michigan Avenue East toward the industrial district, where abandoned buildings offered shelter if you knew where to look. The streets were nearly empty. A few cars passed their headlights, cutting through the rain like searchlights on hunting for something to expose. Jessie kept to the shadows, moving between streetlights, making herself part of the darkness. She passed a bus shelter where a woman in a stained garment clutched a shopping cart full of plastic bags. The woman's eyes were empty, lost somewhere far away from this rain-soaked street. Jessie recognized that look. She'd seen it in mirrors at gas station bathrooms when she dared to look at her own reflection. The look of someone who'd given up on being found. Just find somewhere dry, Jessie muttered to herself. Just one night. The industrial district sprawled before her. Abandoned factories with broken windows, warehouses covered in graffiti, the occasional semi-truck rumbling past hauling goods from the river docks. This part of Detroit belonged to people the city had forgotten. People like her. That's when she saw it. A neon sign flickering in the rain, half the letters dead but still readable. The Iron Horse. A roadhouse. A bar. The kind of place where questions weren't asked and nobody looked twice at a kid seeking warmth as long as she didn't cause trouble. Jessie hesitated at the door. Bars meant danger. Drunk men with wandering hands. Women who'd turn her in to the cops just to feel like they'd done their good deed for the day. But bars also meant heat, meant shelter from the rain, meant maybe, if she was lucky, a kind waitress who'd slip her some leftover fries. She'd survived worse gambles. Through the fogged glass door, she could see bodies hunched over a bar. The blue glow of a television mounted above rows of bottles. The amber warmth of beer signs advertising brands she'd never tasted. The place looked half empty, which was good. Empty meant less attention. Her hand trembled on the door handle. From cold or fear, she couldn't tell anymore. The two felt the same these days. You going in or what? Jessie spun around. A trucker in a worn cap stood behind her, cigarette dangling from his lips, impatience carved into every line of his weathered face. His eyes moved over her in a way that made her want to run. Sorry, Jessie mumbled, pulling the door open and slipping inside before he could say anything else. The smell hit her first. Stale beer, fried food, and decades of cigarette smoke baked into every surface. A jukebox in the corner played something old and country, the singer's voice crackling through speakers that had seen better decades. The warmth wrapped around her like a blanket, so welcome after the cold rain that Jessie almost cried. She spotted a corner booth with torn vinyl seats and slid in, making herself as small as possible. The hood stayed up, her arms crossed over her chest, her eyes fixed on the table, counting the cigarette burns in the wood, anything to avoid drawing attention. The bar itself ran the length of the room, bottles backlit and gleaming. A handful of truckers sat scattered across stools, nursing beers and avoiding conversation. In the back, a couple argued in whispers that occasionally broke into hisses sharp enough to cut through the music. Near the pool table, two men chalked cues and circled the green, felt like predators sizing up prey. And at the far end of the bar sat an old woman who didn't belong. Jessie found herself staring despite her better judgment. The woman had to be in her late 60s with silver-white hair pulled back in a long braid that hung down her back. A red bandana covered the top of her head. She wore a leather vest so worn it looked soft as cloth, every inch covered in patches that told stories Jessie couldn't read from this distance. but she could make out the main patch, the rocker that curved across the back. Steelhounds, MC, Detroit, a biker. An old biker woman sitting alone at a dive bar at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, coffee cup cradled in weathered hands that looked like they'd seen their share of fights. The woman sat perfectly still, staring at something beyond the rain-streaked windows. Something far away, something only she could see. There was a quality to her stillness that reminded Jesse of soldiers in war movies, the ones who'd seen too much and come back different. "Get you something," Jesse jumped. A waitress had appeared out of nowhere, mid-50s with tired eyes and a name tag that read Diane. She held an order pad like a weapon, like she'd used it to swat away too many wandering hands to count. "Just water, please," Jesse said, keeping her voice low. Diane looked at her for a long moment. Jesse braced for the inevitable. The demand to order something real or get out. The threat to call someone. The look of disgust that usually preceded her ejection from places like this. Instead, Diane sighed, a sound that carried decades of watching people suffer and being powerless to stop it. "Kitchen's about to close. You want some fries on the house?" Jesse blinked. Kindness. Actual kindness. It hurt worse than cruelty sometimes. "I don't have money," she admitted. "Did I ask if you had money?" Diane's voice was sharp, but her eyes were soft. "You want the fries or not?" "Yeah, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. They've been sitting under the heat lamp for an hour." Diane walked away without waiting for a response, her shoes squeaking against the sticky floor. Jesse let her gaze drift back to the old biker woman. Up close, she could see more details. The patches weren't random. Each one told a story. Locations, years, symbols Jesse didn't understand but sensed were important. One patch showed a wolf's head with an iron chain wrapped around its neck, fierce and defiant. The woman's hands wrapped around that coffee cup bore scars, knuckles that had been broken and healed crooked, burn marks on the wrists, the hands of someone who'd worked hard her whole life, who'd fought for everything she had. And then the woman turned her head and her eyes locked onto Jesse. Jesse's breath caught. Those eyes were gray-blue, sharp as broken glass, and they stared at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't predatory. It was something else entirely. Recognition. But that was impossible. Jesse had never seen this woman before in her life. Had she? The woman's lips moved, forming words Jesse couldn't hear from across the bar. She looked like she was seeing a ghost, like Jesse was someone she'd been waiting for. "Mama Birdie, you want a warm-up?" The bartender, a big guy with a beard like a brush fire and tattoos climbing both arms, held up a coffee pot. Jesse saw his name tag said Axel. The old woman, Mama Birdie, shook her head without breaking eye contact with Jesse. "I'm fine, Axel, just watching." "Watching what?" "The thing I've been waiting for since 2016. Axel laughed like she'd told a joke, but something in the sound rang hollow. He moved on to other customers, leaving Mama Birdie alone with her cold coffee and her intense stare. Jesse couldn't look away. Something about this woman pulled at her, made her think of her mother, even though they looked nothing alike. Maybe it was the way she held herself. That combination of strength and sadness that Eva had worn like a second skin. Diane returned with a basket of fries. They were cold, soggy, and absolutely perfect. Jesse ate slowly, savoring each one, making them last because she didn't know when the next meal would come. The salt stung her chapped lips. The grease coated her empty stomach. It was the best thing she'd tasted in days. She was halfway through the basket when the door opened. 3 men walked in. Jesse knew trouble when she saw it, had learned to read danger the way other kids learned to read street signs. These men radiated it like heat from asphalt in summer. They wore black leather, but it was too new, too clean. Not like Mama Birdie's worn vest that told stories. This was costume leather, performance leather, leather meant to intimidate. They moved with coordination that spoke of practice, of purpose. One drifted toward the door, blocking the exit. One positioned himself near the pool table, eyes scanning the room. The third walked slowly toward the bar, toward Mama Birdie, his boots clicking against the floor like a countdown. Jesse's stomach tightened. She'd seen men like this before, in foster homes, on street corners, in the moments right before everything went wrong. They weren't here for beer and company. They were here for something else. Mama Birdie noticed them too. Jesse could tell by the way her spine straightened almost imperceptibly. The way her left hand drifted toward the napkin holder beside her coffee cup. The way her eyes finally came back from whatever distant place they'd been visiting, focusing sharp and hard on the man approaching her. The jukebox clicked to a new song. Something slow and mournful about lost love and empty highways. Axel, the bartender, glanced between Mama Birdie and the three men. His hand moved beneath the bar, reaching for something Jesse couldn't see. His face had gone pale. The man approaching Mama Birdie had a tattoo on his neck. Jesse could see it clearly now as he stepped into the light. A viper. Black and coiled, ready to strike. Just like the tattoos on the men who'd killed her mother. Jesse's heart slammed against her ribs. Her hands started shaking so hard she had to put down the fries she'd been eating. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. Somehow, impossibly, the past had followed her here. "Mama Birdie," the Viper man said, his voice carrying across the bar. "Been a long time." "Not long enough, Cade." Mama Birdie's voice was rough like gravel under tires. "I thought your kind learned to stay out of our territory." Cade smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Your territory, old woman, you don't own anything anymore. Not this bar, not this city, not even that dusty vest you're wearing. Times have changed. Boy, I was burying men like you before your granddaddy learned to walk. Maybe that's the problem." Cade pulled back his jacket, revealing the pistol tucked into his waistband. "Old dogs need to be put down." Everything happened at once. The couple in the back booth ducked below the table. Axel hit the floor behind the bar so fast Jesse barely saw him move. The pool players scattered like roaches when the lights came on. Diane, the kind waitress, dropped her order pad and ran for the kitchen. And Cade pulled his gun. The first shot shattered the television above the bar, raining glass and sparks across the liquor bottles. The sound was impossibly loud, a thunderclap that made Jesse's ears ring and her vision swim. She threw herself sideways, crashing out of the booth and onto the sticky floor. Her hip hit hard enough to bruise. Her hands landed in something wet and sticky, beer or blood she couldn't tell. More shots. 3, 4, 5. The sound overlapped until it became one continuous roar. Glass exploded everywhere. A neon beer sign burst in a shower of colored shards. Wood splintered as bullets punched through the bar, through tables, through the jukebox, which died mid-lyric with a sound like a mechanical scream. Jessie pressed herself flat against the floor, cheek against the cold, dirty tile, and watched everything unfold in fragments. The man by the door had a gun out now, firing at someone behind the bar. The pool table man was moving toward Mama Birdie, his own weapon raised. The third shooter, Jesse couldn't see him anymore, could only hear the crack of his pistol somewhere off to the right. And Mama Birdie was fighting back. The old woman moved faster than anyone her age had a right to move. She'd flipped the bar stool beside her into the path of the pool table, man buying herself a precious second. Her hand came up with a revolver, heavy and mean-looking, and she squeezed off 2 shots that punched holes in the wall inches from Cade's head. "Is that all you got?" she shouted, and there was something wild in her voice, something that had been caged for too long and was finally free. "Send your whole crew next time, you coward." But she was outgunned and outmanned, and she knew it. Cade recovered from his miss, planted his feet, took careful aim, and fired. Jesse saw it happen in slow motion, the way trauma makes time stretch and bend. The muzzle flash, the kick of the gun, the bullet crossing the space between Cade and Mama Birdie in a fraction of a second that felt like forever. The bullet caught Mama Birdie in the left shoulder, spinning her half around, sending her crashing into a row of bar stools that toppled like dominoes. She hit the floor hard, her revolver skittering away across the tile, blood already spreading beneath her in a dark pool that reflected the flickering neon lights. She groaned. A sound so human, so vulnerable, so exactly like the sound Eva had made in that stairwell 5 years ago, that something inside Jessie cracked wide open. No, not again. She couldn't watch another woman die. Couldn't hide in the shadows while someone bled out. Couldn't run away from death one more time without losing whatever pieces of herself she still had left. "I can't," Jessie whispered to her mother's ghosted God to herself. "I can't leave her." She started crawling. Glass bit into her palms like tiny teeth. The floor was slick with spilled beer and blood. Her knees slid in the mess, barely finding purchase. The shooting had slowed but not stopped. Men shouting to each other, the sound of magazines being reloaded. Footsteps moving, hunting. 20 feet to Mama Birdie. 15. 10. Jesse could see her clearly now. Silver hair matted with blood and beer. Face pale as paper lips pressed tight against pain. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate hitches, but her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling alive, but fading. Hey! Jesse reached her side, grabbed her arm. The leather vest was warm and slick with blood. Hey, can you hear me? We gotta move. Mama Birdie's head turned slowly, like it took all her strength just to move her neck. Those gray-blue eyes, sharp even through the pain, fierce even through the fear, locked onto Jesse's face with an intensity that stole her breath. You, Mama Birdie rasped. Little Valentine, you're real. Jessie froze. That nickname, the one only her mother had used. How could this stranger know that name? What, lady, come on, we gotta go. They're gonna kill us both. I thought I dreamed you. Mama Birdie laughed, or tried to. It came out as a wet cough that flecked her lips with blood. All these years I thought Eva lied to me. Thought you were just a story she made up to give an old woman hope. Eva, her mother's name spoken by this dying stranger in a bar that smelled like death and cheap beer. How do you know my mother? Jesse's voice cracked. How do you know that name? A bullet slammed into the bar above their heads, showering them with splinters of wood. Cade was coming closer. Jesse could hear his boots slow and confident, the footsteps of a man who knew his prey was cornered. Leave me, Mama Birdie hissed, grabbing Jesse's wrist with surprising strength despite the blood loss. Her fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. Get out while you can, baby girl. Run! Not happening. Jessie hooked her arms under Mama Birdie's shoulders and started dragging. The woman was small, maybe 5'2" and 100 pounds soaking wet, but she felt heavier than anyone Jessie had ever carried. The weight of years, the weight of whatever history connected her to Eva, the weight of all the secrets dying with her. Which way? Jessie gasped. Back door, kitchen. But my bike? Forget the bike. No. Mama Birdie's grip tightened, nails digging into Jessie's skin. Keys are in my vest. Left pocket. Take them. Get me to my bike. Lady, you've been shot. Mama Birdie's eyes blazed with a fire that had nothing to do with the pain. Girl, I've been shot before. I've been stabbed, beaten, left for dead in places you can't even imagine. A bullet won't kill me. But if you don't get those keys and get us to that bike in the next 60 seconds, those men will kill us both. Jessie's hands shook as she fumbled inside Mama Birdie's vest, trying not to think about the blood making everything slippery, trying not to think about the last time she touched someone dying, trying not to remember her mother's blood between her fingers, while 9-year-old Jessie crouched in a stairwell, praying the men wouldn't find her, her fingers closed around cold metal, keys attached to a ring with a tiny wolf charm that matched the patch over Mama Birdie's heart. Got them. Good girl, now help me up and don't you dare slow down. Jessie pulled Mama Birdie to her feet. The old woman sagged against her, her weight settling onto Jessie's shoulders. Blood dripped from the gunshot wound, leaving a trail behind them like breadcrumbs in a nightmare fairy tale. They staggered toward the kitchen door. Each step felt like miles. Mama Birdie's boots dragged, leaving smears of blood across the floor. Behind them, shouting, footsteps, the click of fresh magazines being slammed home. There, the kids got the old lady. Don't let them leave, boss said, no witnesses. Jessie hit the kitchen door with her shoulder. It flew open, revealing a cramped space of stainless steel and grease traps, empty, because Diane and the cook had fled the moment the shooting started. A back exit glowed red at the far end, emergency lighting showing the way to salvation or death. Almost there, Jessie panted. Don't you dare die on me. Move, girl. Mama Birdie's voice was weaker now, fading. Don't you dare slow down. They stumbled through the kitchen. Pots clattered off counters. Jessie's foot caught on a floor mat, nearly sending them both sprawling. She caught herself against a prep table, kept moving, pulled Mama Birdie forward by sheer force of will. The exit bar. Jessie hit it hard and burst into the night. Rain slammed into her face like a fist, cold and brutal, and so welcome after the heat and smoke of the bar. The parking lot stretched before them, a field of puddles and gravel and motorcycles gleaming in the rain like chrome ghosts. Dozens of bikes, all lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. Which one? Jessie gasped. Red one, end of the row, wings on the tank. Jessie spotted it. A vintage Harley cherry red, even in the darkness, with wings painted in gold across the gas tank. It sat separated from the others like it was too important to park with common machines. They'd made it 10 feet from the door when the shouting began behind them. There, get them! Jessie didn't look back. Couldn't. If she looked back, she'd see the guns. She'd see death chasing them. She'd freeze up like she'd frozen in that stairwell. 5 years ago, paralyzed while her mother bled out, and then they'd both die here in this parking lot, and nothing would ever change. She hoisted Mama Birdie onto the Harley seat. The old woman's head lolled against Jessie's shoulder, her breathing wet, and labored, her skin cold and clammy, despite the blood running hot. "You know how to ride," Mama Birdie mumbled. "I've seen people do it." Jessie swung her leg over the bike. "That's not the same thing?" "It's gonna have to be." Jessie jammed the key into the ignition and twisted. The engine roared to life, a sound so loud and angry, it drowned out even the thunder rolling across Detroit's skyline. The bike vibrated beneath her pure power, waiting to be unleashed, and for a second, Jessie was terrified she'd lose control, crash, kill them both. A bullet sparked off the chrome exhaust pipe inches from her leg. Terrified or not, they were out of time. Jessie kicked the bike into gear the way she'd seen riders do it, felt it lurch beneath her like a living thing, twisted the throttle with everything she had. The Harley screamed forward, rear tire spitting gravel, front wheel lifting slightly before slamming back down. Jessie had no idea what she was doing. No muscle memory, no practice, nothing but desperate instinct and the absolute certainty that stopping meant death. They rocketed out of the parking lot and onto Michigan Avenue. Rain lashed Jessie's face so hard she could barely see. The bike wobbled, threatened to dump them, but somehow she kept it upright through sheer terror and dumb luck. Mama Birdie slumped against her back, arms wrapped around Jessie's waist in a grip that grew weaker with every passing second. "Stay awake!" Jessie shouted over the wind in the engine and the rain. "You hear me? Stay awake!" "Girl," Mama Birdie's voice was barely a whisper against Jessie's ear. "There's something I need to tell you." "Tell me later. After a doctor looks at you." "No, now." Mama Birdie coughed and Jessie felt something warm and wet soak through the back of her jacket. Blood. Too much blood. "In my vest, inner pocket, there's a picture." "I don't care about a picture." "You will." Mama Birdie's grip loosened another degree. "When you find it, everything will make sense. Everything. Your mama. Everything she died for." Jessie's blood went cold despite the adrenaline burning through her veins. "How do you know about my mama?" But Mama Birdie didn't answer. Her arms slipped from Jessie's waist completely, and Jessie had to grab her wrist with one hand to keep her from falling off the bike, entirely steering one-handed while the speedometer climbed toward 80 on rain-slicked streets. Through the sheets of rain, Jessie spotted it. A blue and white sign glowing like a lighthouse in a storm. Detroit General Hospital. She took the exit ramp too fast, felt the rear tire slide sideways on wet pavement, and somehow impossibly kept them upright through sheer desperation. The bike fishtailed, recovered, and Jessie aimed it straight for the emergency entrance, like a missile locked on target. She killed the engine and half fell, half climbed off the bike, catching Mama Birdie before she could crumple to the wet ground. "Help!" Jessie's voice cracked raw from screaming into the wind. "Somebody help! She's been shot!" For one eternal moment, nothing happened. The emergency entrance doors stayed closed. The parking lot was empty. Jessie stood there in the rain, holding a dying woman covered in blood that wasn't hers, and thought, this is it. This is how it ends. Helping someone and getting nothing in return. Then the doors flew open. Nurses and scrubs rushed out with a gurney, their voices cutting through the rain with medical codes and commands Jessie didn't understand. Hands pulled Mama Birdie away from her, so many hands moving so fast, professional and urgent and efficient. And then Mama Birdie was gone, swallowed by the white light and sterile chaos of the trauma bay, leaving Jessie standing alone in the rain. She looked down at her hands. Mama Birdie's blood mixed with rain and her own blood from the cuts on her palms, where broken glass had bit deep. The red swirled pink washing down her arms, dripping onto the pavement. That's when she remembered. In my vest, in her pocket, there's a picture. Jessie had left the vest on Mama Birdie. The nurses had taken it with her. Whatever secret the old woman had been trying to share it had disappeared behind those swinging doors into a place where homeless girls weren't allowed to follow. "Hey, you okay?" Jessie looked up. A security guard was approaching, hand on his radio, concern and suspicion warring on his face. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. "You're the one who brought that woman in," Jessie nodded, unable to speak. Her voice had abandoned her somewhere between the bar and the hospital left behind, with her innocence and her illusions that maybe finally things could be different. "You involved in whatever happened to her. Someone shoot at you too." Jessie looked down at herself. Blood-soaked jacket, torn jeans, cuts on her hands. She looked exactly like what she was. A kid who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. A kid who'd made the stupid choice to help instead of run. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know anything." The guard's expression softened slightly. He'd seen homeless kids before, knew the signs, the too big clothes, the haunted eyes, the way she held herself like she expected the world to hit her. "Well, you better figure it out fast." He gestured toward the parking lot entrance. "Because something tells me this night ain't over yet." Jessie followed his gaze. In the distance, she could hear them. Engines, multiple engines, a rumble like thunder that had nothing to do with the storm. They were coming. The Steel Hounds, 98 bikers who'd heard that someone had hurt their matriarch, and they were riding through the night to find out what had happened. Jessie Cole, 14 years old and homeless, who'd spent 3 months invisible, was about to become very, very visible. And somewhere in that hospital, in a vest pocket she couldn't reach, was a photograph that would change everything. 2 hours had passed since Jessie brought Mama Birdie through those emergency doors, and she was still sitting in the same plastic chair, in the waiting room, still damp from the rain, still shaking from something that had nothing to do with the cold. The police had questioned her twice. First, 2 uniformed officers who looked at her with suspicion, barely concealed behind professional courtesy. They'd asked the same questions 3 different ways, trying to catch her in a lie. Where was she when the shooting started? Did she know the victim? Why would someone help a stranger and risk their own life? Jessie had told them the truth. All of it except the part where Mama Birdie had recognized her, had called her. Little Valentine had mentioned her mother's name, like Eva Cole wasn't just another dead woman in Detroit's long list of forgotten victims. That part she kept locked behind her teeth because 5 years of foster care had taught her that truth was a weapon people used against you. The second interview had been worse. A detective in a cheap suit with eyes like a shark, all predator calculation and no warmth. He'd asked about her foster situation, about why she was on the streets, about whether she was involved in gang activity. Jessie had recognized what he was doing, building a case to send her back into the system. Another runaway to be processed and placed and forgotten. She'd given him nothing, just stared at the floor and said, "I don't know," until he'd given up and walked away muttering about kids these days and lack of respect. Now she sat alone in the waiting room, surrounded by the sick and the injured and the people who loved them. A mother held a crying baby. An old man coughed wetly into a handkerchief. 2 teenagers with matching broken arms sat together, probably from some stupid stunt that seemed like a good idea at the time. Normal people with normal problems. Not girls covered in someone else's blood waiting to find out if the stranger they'd saved would survive the night. The vending machine in the corner hummed its interior lights, advertising candy bars and chips Jessie couldn't afford. Her stomach cramped with hunger. Those cold fries from the Iron Horse felt like a lifetime ago. She'd give anything for food right now, but her pockets were empty, and her pride wouldn't let her beg. The television mounted on the wall played the news on mute. Traffic reports, weather forecasts promising more rain, a feel-good story about a dog rescued from a frozen pond. Normal life, life that didn't include bullets and blood, and old women carrying secrets about dead mothers. Jessie pulled her backpack closer, checking for the 100th time that it was still there. Everything she owned, everything that proved she existed. She could feel the photograph of Eva through the canvas, protected in its plastic bag like a holy relic. Her fingers found the locket around her neck. Still there, still locked, still carrying whatever message her mother had hidden inside 8 years ago. Don't open it until you're grown enough to understand. Was she grown enough now? At 14, homeless, covered in blood, sitting in a hospital waiting room, while the stranger who knew her mother's secrets fought for her life. The automatic doors opened. A doctor emerged from the trauma wing, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Behind him, through the briefly opened doors, Jessie caught a glimpse of Mama Birdie on a gurney. Machines beeping, tubes running everywhere. an oxygen mask covering her weathered face. "She's stable," the doctor said to the uniformed officers clustered near the nurse's station. "Lost a lot of blood, but she's a fighter. Bullet missed the major arteries by centimeters. Another inch to the right, she'd have bled out before she got here." Relief flooded through Jessie so suddenly it made her dizzy. Mama Birdie was alive. The woman she'd saved would live. For the first time in 5 years, Jessie had done something right, had saved someone instead of watching them die. "We'll know more in the next few hours," the doctor continued. "Right now, she needs rest. No visitors except immediate family." Family. Jessie didn't have family. Hadn't had family since Ava died in that stairwell. The word felt foreign, something that belonged to other people. Normal people. People who had homes and Christmas cards and someone to call when the world got too heavy to carry alone. She stood up before she realized she was moving. Her legs protested stiff from sitting, but she crossed to the doctor anyway. "Excuse me." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "The woman they brought in. Her vest. Is it still with her?" The doctor frowned. "Her personal effects are being processed." "Why?" "There's something in the pocket, something she wanted me to see." "Are you family?" Jessie hesitated. "I don't know, maybe." One of the police officers stepped forward, the older one with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many nights like this. "Kid, who are you really?" "Jessie Cole," she said. "I told you already." "You told us your name. That's not the same as telling us who you are." Before Jessie could answer, a sound rolled through the building, deep, rumbling, thunder that had nothing to do with the storm outside. The fluorescent lights flickered, the floor vibrated, coffee and styrofoam cups rippled like something out of a disaster movie. The sound built slowly, growing louder and louder, until the windows began to rattle in their frames. Engines, multiple engines, dozens of them. The security guard who'd questioned Jessie earlier pressed his face to the glass entrance doors. His expression changed from curiosity to shock to something close to fear. "Mother of God." Jessie turned. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could see them coming. Motorcycles poured into the parking lot like a chrome river overflowing its banks. Not a few, not a dozen, an army of them. Headlights cutting through the rain like searchlights, hunting for enemy positions. They came in tight formation, coordinated as military units, engines growling in chorus that made the ground shake. One after another, the parking lot transformed before Jessie's eyes. Where there had been empty spaces and scattered cars, now there were bikes, scores of them, a sea of chrome and leather and raw power that seemed impossible, like something from a movie instead of real life. 98 motorcycles. She would learn that number later. 98 men and women of the Steel Hounds MC Detroit chapter, riding through a storm to reach their fallen matriarch. They came for Mama Birdie, and they came ready for war. The bikes circled the hospital like wolves surrounding prey engines, synchronized movements precise. Then, as if responding to an unheard command, they all stopped at once. The sudden silence was louder than the engines had been. Kickstands came down. Riders dismounted. Jessie watched through the glass as the bikers assembled, forming ranks in the rain, like soldiers preparing for battle. Men and women in leather vests identical to Mama Birdie's. Steel Hounds patches catching the parking lot lights. Every face hard, every eye fixed on the hospital entrance. And then one of them started walking forward. He was massive, 6'4" at least, with shoulders broad enough to fill doorways. His leather vest stretched across a chest built from decades of hard work and harder living. His beard was shot through with gray, but his eyes, those ice blue eyes visible, even from this distance, held no softness, no mercy. The other bikers parted for him like the Red Sea before Moses. Deference in every movement, respect in their stillness. This wasn't just another member of the Steelhounds. This was their president. The automatic doors slid open. He stepped through water dripping from his leather, his boots leaving wet prints on the polished floor. The waiting room went completely silent. Even the crying baby stopped, as if sensing that something dangerous had entered the space. He stood there for a moment, scanning the room with military precision. His gaze touched each face and dismissed it, searching for something specific. Someone specific. Then those ice blue eyes landed on Jessie and stopped. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. The world narrowed to a single point of connection. This massive, dangerous man and the homeless girl covered in his matriarch's blood. Jesse wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to bolt for the nearest exit to disappear back into the streets where she understood the rules. But something held her in place. Maybe exhaustion, maybe curiosity, maybe the way he was looking at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. He crossed the room in 4 strides. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Scars marked his face. A white line across his jaw that looked like a knife wound. A puckered circle on his left hand that could only be a bullet scar. The kind of marks that told stories Jesse didn't want to hear, but couldn't look away from. You. His voice was deep, rough, a sound that had given orders and ended arguments for 40 years. You're the one who brought her in. It wasn't a question, but Jesse answered anyway. Yeah. Is she alive? They said she's stable, lost a lot of blood, but she's gonna make it. Something flickered across his face. Relief maybe, or grief, or something else entirely. Jesse couldn't read him. He was a locked door and she didn't have the key. He studied her for a long moment. Jesse forced herself not to look away, even though her heart was hammering and her hands were shaking and every fiber of her being wanted to make herself small and invisible like she'd learned to do. What happened? He asked. So Jesse told him. The bar, the 3 men with their new leather and coordinated movements, the shooting, Mama Birdie going down, the choice Jesse had made to crawl through broken glass instead of running, the escape on the motorcycle she barely knew how to ride. She left out the parts about Mama Birdie recognizing her, about the nickname Little Valentine, about her mother's name spoken like a prayer. Those were hers to keep until she understood what they meant. When she finished, the man stood motionless for a long moment. Jesse watched emotions play across his face like clouds across the sun. Anger, pride, something that might have been respect. Then he reached into his vest and pulled out a photograph, laminated, worn at the edges from being handled too many times. He held it up so Jesse could see, and the floor dropped out from under her. It was her. Younger, maybe 5 years old, smiling at the camera with the kind of innocent joy she barely remembered feeling. She wore a red dress, the one Eva had bought for her 5th birthday. Her dark hair was longer than pulled back in pigtails. And beside her in the photo arm around little Jesse's shoulders was Eva, her mother, alive and beautiful and smiling that smile that lit up every room she entered. They were posed in front of a Christmas tree. Ornaments caught the camera flash. Paper crowns sat crooked on their heads, the kind that came from Christmas crackers. Jesse remembered that Christmas. Remembered the way Eva had laughed when Jesse insisted they wear the crowns all day. Remembered feeling safe and loved and certain that nothing bad could ever touch them. It was the last Christmas before everything fell apart. This fell out of her jacket when the paramedics were working on her, the man said quietly. One of my boys grabbed it before anyone else could see. Jesse couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Couldn't process how this stranger, this dangerous biker, had a photograph of her and her mother from 9 years ago. Turn it over, he said. Jesse took the photo with trembling fingers, flipped it. On the back in Eva's handwriting, that familiar, looping script that Jesse would recognize anywhere, were words that made the world tilt sideways. For Wolf. Protect our daughter, Jesse. Come find us when it's safe. Eva, 2016. Our daughter. Jesse looked up from the photo to find the man staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Something raw and broken and hopeful all at once. Who are you? She whispered. I'm Ryder Maddox, he said, but most people call me Wolf. He paused. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. I'm your father. The words hit Jesse like a physical blow. She stepped back, shaking her head, denying what she'd just heard, even though the evidence was right there in her hands, written in her mother's own handwriting. No. My mom said my dad was dead. She said he died before I was born. She lied to protect you. Ryder's voice cracked on the last word. To protect both of us. From what? Jesse's voice rose, drawing stares from the other people in the waiting room. She didn't care. She's dead. She died 5 years ago and I was alone. If you're my father, where were you? Where were you when she was bleeding out in a stairwell? Where were you when I was bouncing between foster homes? Where were you when I was sleeping under bridges? The pain on Ryder's face was so raw, so devastating, that Jesse almost regretted the words. Almost. Before he could answer, the trauma bay doors swung open again. A nurse emerged, younger than the first one, with urgency in every movement. "She's awake," the nurse said, looking between Jesse and Ryder. "She's asking for the girl, the one who brought her in." Every biker in the room turned to look at Jesse. 98 pairs of eyes fixed on the homeless girl in blood-stained clothes who'd apparently saved their matriarch. Ryder's hand landed on Jesse's shoulder. Heavy, warm, the touch of someone who wanted to claim her but didn't quite know how. "Go," he said quietly. "See what she wants." Jessie looked down at the photograph still clutched in her hands. Her mother's face smiled up at her from 9 years ago, from a time before secrets and death and men with viper tattoos. "Protect our daughter, Jessie." Somehow, impossibly, Eva had known this moment would come, had planned for it, had left breadcrumbs across a decade for Jessie to find her way here. Jessie Cole, 14 years old and homeless, who'd spent 3 months invisible, squared her shoulders and took the first step toward answers that had been waiting since before she was born. The trauma doors swung shut behind her, and she walked down a corridor that smelled of antiseptic and fear. The nurse led her to room 7, paused outside the door. 5 minutes, the nurse said. "She's weak. Don't upset her." Jessie pushed the door open. Mama Birdie looked smaller than she had at the bar. The hospital gown swallowed her thin frame. Tubes ran from her arms to bags of fluid hanging above the bed like transparent stalactites. Monitors traced the stuttering rhythm of her heart in green lines that peaked and fell like tiny mountains. But her eyes, those gray-blue eyes that had blazed with fury during the firefight, were open. Alert, fixed on the doorway like she'd known exactly when Jessie would appear. "Close the door," Mama Birdie rasped. Jessie obeyed. "Come closer. I can barely see you from here." Jessie crossed to her bedside, her feet moving on autopilot. Up close, she could see the toll the night had taken. The pallor beneath weathered skin, the tremor in those scarred hands, the way each breath seemed to cost something precious. "You came back," Mama Birdie whispered. "Most people would have run." "I tried running once." Jessie's voice was barely audible. "Didn't work out." A ghost of a smile crossed Mama Birdie's face. "No, it never does it?" Silence stretched between them. Jessie could hear her own pulse in her ears, could feel the locket pressing against her chest like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "You knew my mother," Jessie said. Not a question, a statement of fact that needed confirmation. Mama Birdie's eyes glistened with tears she was too tough to shed. Evangeline Marie Cole, born September 3rd, 1979. Favorite color was yellow. Couldn't care if she'd tuned to save her life, but she'd sing anyway, every Sunday morning while she made pancakes. Jessie's throat tightened. Those details, those tiny, intimate details that only someone who'd really known Eva could possibly remember. "How do you know that?" "Because I was there every Sunday for 3 years, baby girl." Mama Birdie's hand found Jessie's, her grip weak but insistent. "I was there when you were born. I was there when you took your first steps. I was there for every birthday until your mama had to run." "I don't understand." "Sit down, child. This is going to take a minute, and I'm too tired to repeat myself." Jessie pulled a chair to the bedside and sat. Her legs were shaking. She hadn't noticed until now, but her whole body was trembling like she had a fever. Mama Birdie took a breath that rattled in her chest. "Your mother came to us when she was 19 years old. Showed up at the Steel Hounds clubhouse one night, soaking wet, bloody lip, nowhere to go. Some boyfriend had knocked her around. She needed somewhere safe. The Steel Hounds were safe. For her, they were. We took her in, gave her a room, a job, a family. And Ryder Wolf, we all call him, he took one look at your mama, and that was it. Love at first sight, though he'd never admit it. Too proud, too scared of what it meant." Jessie thought of the massive man in the waiting room. Ice blue eyes, bullet scars, the way he'd looked at her like seeing a ghost. "They were together for 4 years, Mama Birdie continued. Happiest I ever saw either of them. Your mama, she was smart, brilliant really, handled our books, managed our legitimate businesses. We had a garage, a security company, things that kept us afloat while we kept the streets clean of worse predators than us. Then what happened?" Mama Birdie's grip tightened on Jessie's hand. "War happened, baby. The kind that doesn't end with treaties and handshakes. You ever hear of the Viper Syndicate?" Jessie's blood went cold. The Viper tattoo. The men at the bar. The snake coiled on the neck of the man who'd killed her mother. I've heard of them. They've been trying to take over Detroit for 20 years. Drugs, guns, girls, every ugly thing you can imagine, they've got their fingers in it. They wanted what we had: territory, respect, power. But we wouldn't bend, wouldn't break, wouldn't let them turn our streets into their hunting ground. Mama Birdie coughed, winced, continued. Your mama, she worked part-time at a shipping company downtown. Legitimate job, good benefits. Blackwell Shipping, owned by a politician named Garrett Blackwell, who was running for state senate at the time. She was doing their books, just trying to make extra money. And that's when she found it. Found what? Evidence, documents, account numbers, names, everything you'd need to prove that Blackwell Shipping was moving money for the Viper Syndicate, laundering it, cleaning dirty money and sending it overseas, bringing it back sparkling clean. Jessie leaned forward. She found proof. She found proof, and she tried to do the right thing, went to the police. Mama Birdie laughed bitterly. Baby girl, half the cops in this city are on the Viper payroll. She walked into that station and almost got herself killed. They sent men to her apartment that same night. If Wolf hadn't been there, if he hadn't fought them off, your mama would have died in 2010. After that, she knew the truth. The system was rotten. The cops were dirty. There was nowhere safe to go. And that's when she found out she was pregnant. Jessie's hand moved instinctively to her stomach, as if she could feel the ghost of what Eva must have felt. The fear, the impossible choice. She had to decide, Mama Birdie said softly. Stay with Wolf, raise you in the middle of a war, watch you grow up dodging bullets and dirty cops. Or run, leave everything behind, give you a chance at something normal. She chose to run. She chose you, baby. Every time she chose you. Mama Birdie's voice cracked. She left Wolf a letter, explained everything, told him not to follow her, said if he loved her, he'd let her go. That staying away was the only way to keep you both safe. And he listened. What choice did he have? Following her would have led the Vipers right to your door. So he stayed, built the Steel Hounds up strong, made Detroit safe enough that maybe someday you could come home. Mama Birdie paused. He's been waiting 14 years for that day. Jessie pulled her hand away, stood up, paced to the window. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the parking lot lights into abstract patterns. 98 motorcycles sat below like chrome sentinels. She never told me, Jessie whispered. Never told me I had a father. Never told me about any of this. She was protecting you. If you didn't know, you couldn't accidentally reveal anything. Couldn't be used as leverage. Well, it didn't work. Jessie's voice was sharp with anger she didn't know she'd been carrying. They found her anyway. 5 years ago, the Vipers finally tracked her down. She turned to face Mama Birdie. You said you knew what happened. We know what the news said. Woman shot dead in an apartment stairwell. Robbery gone wrong, no witnesses. There was a witness. Jessie's hands clenched into fists. Me. Mama Birdie went very still. What did you see, child? The memory crashed over Jessie like a wave. She'd kept it locked away for 5 years, buried so deep she could almost pretend it hadn't happened. But Mama Birdie's question cracked something open, and suddenly Jessie was 9 years old again, hiding in the shadows while her world ended. We were coming home from the store, Jessie heard herself say. Mama was carrying the groceries. I was carrying a carton of eggs because she said I was big enough to be careful. We lived on the 3rd floor. The elevator was broken, so we took the stairs. She could see it so clearly. Eva ahead of her on the stairs humming that song she always hummed when she was happy. The weight of the egg carton in Jessie's small hands. The echo of their footsteps in the concrete stairwell. 2nd floor landing, and there were 2 men waiting. Black leather jackets. I didn't understand then, but they had Viper tattoos. On their necks. Their hands. Your mama, she saw them and she knew. I could see it in her face. She knew exactly who they were and why they'd come. She put down the groceries and she told me to hide, to get in the corner behind the door and be quiet, not come out no matter what I heard. Jessie's voice broke. I was a good girl. I did what she said. I hid. The men, they asked about documents, files, evidence. Mama said she'd destroyed everything years ago, burned it all. There was nothing left. But they didn't believe her. One of them, the one with the biggest viper tattoo right here on his neck, he said, "You're lying, Eva, and liars need to be taught a lesson." And then he pulled out a gun. Mama Birdie was crying now, tears streaming down her weathered face, but she didn't look away. "Mama begged," Jesse continued. "She said, 'Please, please, my daughter is upstairs. She's just a baby. Please don't do this.' And the man said, 'You should have thought about that before you stole from us.' And then he shot her." The sound echoed in Jesse's memory, the thunderclap, her mother's gasp, the wet thud of her body hitting the concrete. I watched her fall, watched the blood spread. She was looking at me even though I was hidden, looking right at me with these eyes that said, "I'm sorry, baby, I'm so sorry." And then she said, "Run." Her last word, "Run." So I ran, left her there in her own blood, ran up the stairs and out the fire escape, and I kept running until I couldn't breathe. And when I finally stopped, I was 3 miles away behind a dumpster, and my shoes were covered in her blood. Jessie looked down at her hands. They were shaking so hard she could barely see them. I told the police, told my caseworker, told anyone who would listen. But no one believed me. They said I was traumatized, making up stories, that it was just a random robbery, and I'd imagine the rest. She met Mama Birdie's eyes, but I didn't imagine it. I saw them, I heard them, and the man who killed my mother is still out there. "Not for long," Mama Birdie said. Her voice had changed, gone hard, fierce. "Baby girl, we're going to find him, every single one of them, and we're going to make them pay for what they took from you." How I don't even know his name. You don't need to know his name. I know it. Wolf knows it. We've known for 5 years who killed your mama. Cade Richardson, enforcer for the Viper Syndicate, and the corrupt cop who gave the order, Detective Harlan Voss. Jesse's world tilted. They knew. All this time they'd known who murdered Eva, and they'd done nothing. Why didn't you kill them? The question came out raw, angry. If you knew, why are they still alive? Because killing them wouldn't have solved anything. Wouldn't have brought down the whole organization. Wouldn't have protected you. Mama Birdie reached for Jesse's hand again. Your mama, she wanted justice. Real justice. Not revenge. She wanted everyone involved to pay, from the street thugs to the cops, to the politicians at the top. She left instructions, baby, in case something happened to her. She told me exactly what to do. What instructions? Did your mama give you anything? Something she made you promise to keep safe? Jesse's hand went to the locket. Mama Birdie's eyes followed the movement. How long you been wearing that? Since my 9th birthday, 2 weeks before she died. She said, don't ever take it off. Don't open it until I'm grown. You're grown enough now. Mama Birdie's voice was gentle. Open it, child. It's time. Jesse's fingers fumbled with a tiny catch on the side of the locket. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip it. 8 years. She'd worn this locket for 8 years without ever looking inside. The catch released. The locket swung open. Inside, where you'd normally find a photograph, there was a tiny slip of paper folded so many times it was barely bigger than Jesse's thumbnail. The paper was yellowed, fragile, like it might crumble to dust if she handled it too roughly. Jessie unfolded it with the care of someone defusing a bomb. The handwriting was her mother's. Jessie would recognize it anywhere. But faded, barely legible, written in haste or fear or both. Lockbox 77144, Detroit Savings and Trust. Your inheritance, my brave Valentine. Jessie read it 3 times. 4. The words didn't change. She hid everything in a lockbox, Jessie whispered. And she gave me the key. Mama Birdie nodded. Your mama was brilliant. The Vipers have been hunting that evidence for 14 years. They've killed to find it, tortured people, burned down buildings, and all this time it was hanging around your neck. But why didn't she just use it? Why hide it? Because she couldn't use it without exposing herself, without leading them right to you. So she waited, planned, sent that photo to Wolf with instructions to protect you when the time came, sent me copies of some documents to hold in case she didn't make it. Mama Birdie's voice dropped. She was building a case, baby, building it careful and slow and perfect. She would have brought them all down if she'd lived long enough. Now I have to finish it. Now we finish it. Together. The door burst open. Ryder filled the doorway, his massive frame blocking the light from the hallway. "We've got a problem," he said. Jesse turned. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that wears a badge." Ryder stepped into the room and Jesse could see the anger radiating off him like heat. Detective Harlan Voss just showed up with 6 uniforms. "He's demanding to take you into protective custody." Mama Birdie struggled to sit up. "Harlan Voss, that snake." "You know him?" Jesse asked. "Know him?" Mama Birdie's laugh was bitter. "Baby girl, he's been on the Viper payroll for 15 years. He's the one who gave the order to kill your mama." Jesse's blood went cold. The man who'd ordered her mother's murder was here, in this hospital, coming for her. "If he gets his hands on you," Ryder said, looking at Jesse with those ice blue eyes, "you won't survive the night." Jesse stood frozen in Mama Birdie's hospital room, her mind racing. Detective Harlan Voss, the man who'd given the order to kill her mother, the man who'd let her bleed out in a stairwell while a 9-year-old girl watched. And now he was here walking these same halls hunting for her. "How long do we have?" Jesse asked. Ryder checked his phone. "Maybe 5 minutes before he gets past hospital security. Maybe less if he's smart enough to come through the service entrance. We need to move." Mama Birdie tried to pull out her IV, but Jesse stopped her. "You just got shot. You can't go anywhere." "Girl, I've been shot before." Mama Birdie's eyes blazed. "I've been stabbed, beaten, and left for dead in 3 different states. A bullet hole won't stop me when family needs protecting." Family. The word hit Jesse harder than it should have. She'd been alone for so long that the concept felt foreign, dangerous, like something that could be taken away. "There's a service elevator," Ryder said. "Takes you down to the loading dock. Laundry trucks use it. We can get you both out that way." "And then what?" Jesse demanded. "I run again. That's all I've been doing for 5 years, running and hiding and being invisible. I'm tired of running." Ryder looked at her with something that might have been respect. "Then what do you want to do?" Jesse thought about the locket around her neck, the lockbox number written in her mother's handwriting, the evidence that could bring down everyone who'd destroyed her life. "I want to finish what my mother started," she said. "I want to get to that bank, open that lockbox, and make every single one of them pay." "The bank doesn't open until 9 tomorrow morning," Mama Birdie said. "That's almost 12 hours from now. We need somewhere safe to wait." "The clubhouse," Ryder said. "Stillwater Warehouse. It's been a Steelhound safe house since before you were born, Jesse. Your mother helped us buy it." The information kept coming, pieces of a past Jesse had never known existed. Her mother hadn't just been a victim. She'd been part of this world, this family of bikers and warriors who protected their own. Voices echoed in the hallway. Official voices giving orders. Voss was close. "We need to go now," Ryder said. He moved to Mama Birdie's bedside, gently disconnecting her IV despite her protests. "Can you walk?" "Boy, I can run if I have to." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Ryder helped her to her feet. She swayed pale and shaky, but she stayed upright through sheer stubbornness. Jesse grabbed her backpack, checking one more time that everything was there. The photograph of Eva, the locket with its secret message. Everything that proved she existed, that her mother had existed, that their lives had mattered. They moved into the hallway. 2 Steelhounds members stood guard outside the room. Massive men in leather vests who nodded at Ryder and fell into formation around them. Protection. Jesse wasn't used to having protection. The service elevator was at the end of the hall, past the nurse's station and through a door marked staff only. They were 20 feet away when Detective Voss stepped around the corner. He was exactly what Jesse expected. Mid-50s with the kind of face that looked friendly until you saw the eyes. Cold eyes, calculating eyes. The eyes of a man who'd sold his soul so long ago he couldn't remember what it felt like to have one. 6 uniformed officers flanked him, hands resting on their service weapons. Not drawn yet, but ready. Well, Voss said, his voice carrying down the hallway. "Ryder Maddox, been a while since I've seen you outside a courtroom." "Voss," Ryder's voice was flat, dangerous. "You're a long way from your jurisdiction." Funny thing about jurisdiction, when it comes to protecting a minor, I can go pretty much anywhere I want. Voss's eyes locked onto Jesse. "Jesse Cole, I need you to come with me. We have reason to believe your life is in danger." Jesse felt everyone in the hallway tense. The two steel hounds guards shifted their weight ready for violence. Ryder's hand moved almost imperceptibly towards something under his vest. Even Mama Birdie, weak and bleeding, straightened her spine like a soldier preparing for battle. But Jessie stepped forward before anyone else could move. "Danger from who?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Voss smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "From them." He jerked his chin toward Ryder and the steel hounds. "These people aren't your friends, kid. They're criminals, gang members. Whatever they've told you, it's lies." Jessie thought about the photograph in her backpack, the one with her mother's handwriting on the back. "Protect our daughter, Jessie." She thought about Mama Birdie taking a bullet and still managing to tell Jessie the truth about Eva. She thought about Ryder's face when he'd looked at her raw with 14 years of grief and hope. She pulled out the photograph, held it up so Voss could see. "Really?" Jessie said. "Then why did my mother leave this?" She turned it around, showing him the inscription. "For Wolf, protect our daughter." Those are her words, my mother's words. She wanted me to find him. Voss's expression flickered, just for a second, but Jessie caught it. Recognition. Fear. He knew about the photograph, knew what it meant. "Where did you get that?" His voice had changed. The friendly detective act was gone, replaced by something harder. "From her." Jessie pointed at Mama Birdie. "My grandmother. The woman those criminals shot tonight while trying to kill me." "I don't know what game you think you're playing." "No game." Jessie stepped closer, anger overriding fear. "You knew my mother, didn't you, Evangeline Cole? She worked at Blackwell Shipping before she disappeared. Before she died." The hallway had gone completely silent. Even the uniformed officers were watching now, sensing something was wrong with this picture. "I don't know what you're talking about," Voss said, but his hand had moved to his gun. "I think you do." Jessie's voice was shaking now, but not from fear, from rage. 5 years of rage finally finding a target. "I think you knew exactly what that company was doing. I think you helped cover it up. And I think you're here right now because someone told you I have evidence that could burn it all down." Voss's jaw tightened. Behind him, one of the uniformed officers shifted uncomfortably. They were starting to realize this wasn't a simple protective custody situation. "Last chance, kid," Voss said. "Come with me now or I'll arrest everyone in this hallway for obstruction." "I wouldn't do that." Ryder's voice was quiet, but it carried. "You're outnumbered, Voss. There are 98 steel hounds in the parking lot right now. You really want to start a war in a hospital full of innocent people?" Voss looked at Ryder, at the two massive guards, at Mama Birdie standing despite her gunshot wound. His hand stayed on his gun, but Jessie saw the calculation in his eyes. The math didn't work in his favor. "You've got 24 hours, Voss finally said, stepping aside. "Then I'm coming for you with a warrant, and next time your biker friends won't be able to protect you." He turned and walked away, his officers following. But he looked back once, and the look he gave Jessie was pure malice. They waited until the elevator doors closed behind Voss and his men. Then Ryder moved fast. "Service elevator. Now." They ran. Mama Birdie between Ryder and one of the guards, Jessie bringing up the rear with her backpack clutched tight. The service elevator was empty, waiting. They piled in. The doors closed. "That man killed my mother," Jessie said quietly as they descended. "I know, baby girl," Mama Birdie said, "and tomorrow we're going to prove it." But as they emerged into the loading dock where the black van waited, engines idling, none of them noticed the security camera in the corner. None of them saw Detective Voss watching from a monitor 3 floors up, his phone already pressed to his ear. "They're running," he said into the phone. "Heading for Stillwater, most likely. No, don't move on them tonight. Too many witnesses. But tomorrow morning when the girl goes to that bank," he smiled cold and cruel, "make sure she never walks out." He hung up and stared at the monitor arm, showing Jessie climbing into the van, Ryder's protective hand on her shoulder. 14 years, Voss muttered. 14 years I've been waiting for Evangeline's little brat to surface. And now she walks right into my city carrying the one thing that could destroy everything. He pulled out another phone, made another call. "Senator Blackwell? We have a situation. Ava Cole's daughter is alive, and she knows about the lockbox." A pause, then Voss nodded. "Yes, sir. The bank opens at 9. I'll have a team in position by 8. The girl won't be a problem after tomorrow." Just like her mother. He hung up and watched the monitor as the van disappeared into the Detroit night, carrying Jessie toward temporary safety and tomorrow's trap. The game was in motion, and Detective Harlan Voss never lost. The ride to Stillwater Warehouse took 20 minutes through rain-slicked streets. Jesse sat in the back of the van next to Mama Birdie watching the city pass by. Detroit at night was a different animal. Neon lights reflected in puddles. Abandoned buildings stood like tombstones marking the death of better days. But there was life here too. Bars still open, people still walking. The city refused to die no matter how hard the world tried to kill it. The warehouse sat in an industrial district on the east side. From the outside, it looked abandoned. Rusted chains on the gate, faded signs warning of keys and security systems that probably hadn't worked in decades. But when one of the steel hounds punched a code into a hidden keypad, the gate swung open, smooth and silent. The van drove through into a courtyard where dozens of motorcycles were already parked. 98 bikes gleaming, even in the rain. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed. What looked like industrial decay from the outside was actually a fully functioning headquarters. Living quarters. A kitchen stocked with enough food to feed an army. Common areas with worn couches and a massive television. Maps covered one wall marking territories and safe houses throughout Detroit. But what struck Jessie most were the photographs. Everywhere she looked, photographs in frames. Families, children, graduations and weddings and birthdays. This wasn't a gang hideout. This was a home. Your mother loved this place, Mama Birdie said, watching Jessie take it all in. She said it reminded her that family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up when you needed them. A woman approached them, young, maybe mid-20s, with dark auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a Steel Hounds t-shirt, and her eyes the same ice blue as Ryder's locked onto Jessie with intense curiosity. "So, it's true," the woman said. "You're real." Jessie bristled at being talked about like an object. "Last time I checked." The woman laughed. "She's got your attitude, Dad. God help us all." Dad. The word connected dots Jessie hadn't realized needed connecting. "Jessie," Ryder said, "this is Phoenix, your sister, half-sister technically." Jessie felt the world tilt again. A sister. She had a sister. Phoenix must have seen something in Jessie's face because her expression softened. "I know this is a lot. Trust me, I showed up here 3 years ago and had the same look. Found out I had a father, a whole biker family, and a missing sister I'd never met. It's overwhelming." "That's an understatement," Jessie managed. "Come on." Phoenix gestured toward the kitchen. "You look like you haven't eaten in days. Let's get some food in you, and then we can figure out how to keep you alive long enough to take down a criminal empire." Over the next few hours, Jessie learned the plan. The Steel Hounds had been preparing for this moment for years, waiting for the day when Eva's daughter would show up ready to finish what her mother started. Ryder spread maps across a large table. Detroit Savings and Trust opens at 9 a.m. The lockbox is in the main vault. Getting in is easy. Getting out alive is the hard part. "Voss will have people watching," one of the older Steelhounds said. His name was Marcus, and he had the kind of scars that came from decades of fighting. "The Vipers, too. The second Jessie shows her face, they'll know." "So we create a distraction," Phoenix suggested. "Draw their attention away from the bank." "Won't work," Mama Birdie said from her wheelchair. The club medic had patched her up properly, but she was still pale and weak. "Voss isn't stupid. He'll see through any obvious distraction. We need something better." Jessie listened to them debate strategies, growing more frustrated by the minute. They were trying to protect her, but protection meant treating her like a child, like something fragile that needed to be hidden. "What if I just walk in?" she said. Everyone turned to look at her. "What if I walk in the front door alone, like I've got nothing to hide, open the lockbox, take whatever's inside, and walk back out?" "They'll grab you before you make it to your car," Ryder said. "So let them." The room went silent. "Absolutely not." Ryder's voice was hard. "I'm not using my daughter as bait." "You're not using me as anything," Jessie shot back. "I'm choosing this. My mother spent 14 years protecting that evidence. She died for it. And I'm not going to let it sit in a vault for another 14 years because everyone's too scared to do what needs to be done." "She's right," Mama Birdie said quietly. "The girl's right. Ma, she's 14 years old." "I was 12 when I took my first bullet," Mama Birdie said. Age doesn't matter when you're fighting for family. And this is her fight, Ryder. It's been her fight since the moment those men killed Eva. Ryder looked at Jesse for a longer moment. She met his gaze, refusing to back down. Finally, he nodded. If we do this, he said, we do it smart. We need backup. We need insurance. We need the feds, Phoenix said. Everyone turned to look at her. Think about it, Phoenix continued. Eva tried to take this evidence to the Detroit police. They tried to kill her, but what if she'd gone higher federal level? FBI, they've been trying to bring down the Viper Syndicate for years. They'd jump at the chance to finally get solid evidence. And how exactly do we contact the FBI without tipping off Voss? Marcus asked. Phoenix pulled out her phone. I'm a lawyer, remember, I've got contacts, and I know for a fact that there's a financial crimes unit that's been investigating Blackwell shipping for the past 8 years. She made a call, spoke in low tones for several minutes. When she hung up, she was smiling. They'll meet us at the bank tomorrow morning, 8:30, before it opens. Jessie didn't sleep that night. She tried lying on a cot in one of the warehouse's small bedrooms, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face, heard the gunshot, smelled the blood. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up and walked out to the main area. Ryder was there sitting alone at the table, a cup of coffee in his hands and ghosts in his eyes. Can't sleep either, he asked. Jessie shook her head and sat down across from him. I've been thinking about what I'd say to you, Ryder said after a moment. For 14 years, I've been imagining this conversation. What I'd tell you about your mother, about why she left, about why I let her go. You don't have to. Yeah, I do. He looked at her, really looked at her, and Jessie saw pain so deep it had carved canyons in his soul. Your mother was the best person I ever knew. Kind when the world was cruel. Brave when she had every reason to be afraid. She saw good in people, even people like me, who'd done things we couldn't take back. She loved you, Jessie said. I could tell from the photo, from the way she wrote your name. I loved her more than anything in this world. Still do, still will, until the day I die. Ryder's voice cracked. When she left, when she took you and disappeared, it broke something in me. I wanted to follow. Wanted to tear this city apart until I found you both. But her letter, it made me understand. Following would have led the Vipers right to you. So I stayed, and I waited, and I hoped that someday, somehow, you'd come home. I'm not sure this is home, Jessie said honestly. No, Ryder agreed, not yet, but it could be, if you want it to be. Jessie thought about the question she'd been carrying for 5 years. The one she'd asked foster parents and social workers and God when she still believed in prayer. Where were you? The words came out raw. When she died, where were you? Ryder's face crumpled. 30 miles away, sitting in this very warehouse, drinking whiskey and feeling sorry for myself. I didn't know she was in Detroit. Didn't know the Vipers had found her. Didn't know she was dying until I saw it on the news 2 days later. He looked at his hands like they'd betrayed him. I should have been there. Should have protected her. Protected you. You didn't know. That doesn't make it hurt less. Ryder met her eyes. I failed your mother. I won't fail you. Not again. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever you need, I'm here. I'm your father, and I'm not going anywhere. Jessie felt something crack open inside her chest. Something that had been frozen since that stairwell. Since the moment she'd realized she was truly alone in the world. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Dad. The word felt strange in her mouth. Foreign, but also right in a way she couldn't explain. Ryder reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was calloused and scarred, the hand of someone who'd fought for everything he had. But it was warm, solid, real. They sat like that until dawn, father and daughter learning how to be a family. At 8:15 the next morning, Jessie walked through the doors of Detroit Savings and Trust. She wore clean clothes Phoenix had given her, jeans that actually fit, and a Steel Hounds t-shirt under a jacket. Her hair was still short and messy, but she washed the blood out. Tried to look like a normal kid instead of a street rat. The bank was mostly empty. A few early customers, tellers preparing for the day, and in the back corner, 2 people who didn't belong. A woman in a dark suit approached Jessie, late 30s, black with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Jessie Cole. Jessie nodded. I'm Agent Caroline Stone, FBI. She showed her badge. This is my partner, Agent Blake Morrison. Morrison was white, early 40s with the kind of face that looked like it smiled often, but wasn't smiling now. He studied Jesse with concern. You're really just a kid. Old enough, Jesse said. Stone gestured toward a back office. We need to talk before you access that lockbox. The office was small and windowless. Jesse sat in a chair that smelled like old leather while the two agents stood. Your sister Phoenix called us last night, Stone said. Told us you might have evidence related to our investigation into Blackwell Shipping and the Viper Syndicate. I have evidence, Jesse corrected. My mother gathered it 14 years ago. She died protecting it. Evangeline Cole, Morrison said softly. We know about her. We've been building a case for years trying to connect the dots she found. Every time we get close, evidence disappears. Witnesses recant. Cops we thought we could trust turn out to be dirty. Cops like Detective Harlan Voss, Jesse said. Both agents' expressions sharpened. What do you know about Voss? Stone asked. I know he gave the order to kill my mother. I know he's been on the Viper payroll for 15 years. And I know he's hunting me right now because he thinks I have something that could destroy him. Stone and Morrison exchanged a look. We've suspected Voss for years, Stone admitted, but we could never prove anything. If your mother's evidence is what we think it is, we could take down the entire organization. Voss, Senator Blackwell, the whole Viper syndicate. But there's a problem, Morrison said. The Vipers know you're here. Voss has men watching every exit. The second you walk out with that evidence, they'll grab you, maybe kill you. We can't protect you out there. So don't. Jesse met their eyes. Let them take me. Absolutely not, Stone said immediately. Listen to me. Jesse leaned forward. They won't kill me, not right away. They'll want to make sure the evidence is real. Want to know if there are copies. They'll take me somewhere private, try to make me talk. She swallowed hard. Let them. Track me. Follow me. Catch them in the act. You're asking us to use a 14-year-old as bait, Morrison said, horrified. I'm asking you to let me finish what my mother started. Jesse pulled out the photograph, showed them Eva's handwriting. She died for this. I watched her die, and I'm not going to let that be for nothing. Stone studied her for a long moment. You're sure about this? Once we put that tracker in you, there's no taking it back. If something goes wrong, if they find it, they won't, Jesse interrupted. And if they do, the Steel Hounds will come for me, my father, my family. Morrison pulled out a small device no bigger than a grain of rice. GPS tracker, subcutaneous injection. We'll be able to follow you anywhere in the city. Do it, Jesse said. The injection hurt more than she expected. A sharp pinch between her shoulder blades, then a moment of pressure as Morrison pushed the tracker under her skin. Jesse bit her lip to keep from crying out. You're incredibly brave, Stone said quietly. Your mother would be proud. Jesse stood. Let's hope I live long enough to make that matter. The vault was in the basement. A bank employee, a nervous man with sweating hands, unlocked box 77144 and placed it on a private viewing table. Then he left, giving Jesse privacy that felt more like abandonment. She opened the box. Inside was a manila envelope thick with papers. Jesse's hands shook as she pulled it out. This was it. The evidence her mother had died protecting. The key to destroying everyone who'd taken Eva from her. She opened the envelope. Photocopies, page after page of photocopies, account ledgers, wire transfer receipts, names and dates and amounts, but all copies, not originals. Jesse's heart sank. Had her mother been wrong? Had the originals been destroyed after all? But no, Eva wouldn't have sent her here for photocopies. There had to be more. Had to be. Jesse tucked the envelope under her arm and walked back upstairs. Stone and Morrison watched her emerge from the vault, saw the envelope, nodded. The plan was in motion. She walked out the front door into morning sunshine. The rain had finally stopped, leaving Detroit sparkling and clean. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. The door opened. A man with a viper tattooed on his neck smiled at her. Cade, the man who'd shot Mama Birdie, the man who'd killed her mother. Get in, little girl, he said. Jessie got in. The SUV pulled away from the bank, merging into traffic like any normal vehicle. Jesse sat in the back seat, sandwiched between two men who smelled like cigarettes and violence. Cade was in the passenger seat, twisted around to look at her, with eyes that had watched too many people die. "Smart girl," he said. "Didn't try to run, didn't try to scream. Your mama was smart too. Look where it got her." Jessie said nothing. The GPS tracker beneath her skin felt like it was burning, but she knew that was just her imagination. Stone and Morrison were tracking her. Ryder was tracking her. She wasn't alone. "Give me the envelope," Cade demanded. Jesse handed it over. Watched him rifle through the pages, his expression shifting from satisfaction to confusion to something close to fear. "These are copies," he said. "Where are the originals?" "That's all that was in the box." Cade's hand shot out, grabbing Jessie by the throat. Not squeezing hard enough to choke her, but the threat was clear. "Don't lie to me, little girl. Your mama had originals. Account numbers, transaction records. Everything that could bring down Senator Blackwell and everyone who works for him. Where are they?" Jessie couldn't breathe enough to answer, even if she wanted to. She clawed at his hand, panic rising. The driver spoke without taking his eyes off the road. "Cade, boss said no bruises until we know what she knows." Cade released her. Jessie sucked in air, coughing. "Let's try this again," Cade said. "Where are the original documents?" Jessie thought fast. The tracker was working. She just needed to buy time. "There's a second location my mother told me before she died. A backup. Where? I'll show you, but I need Mama Birdie. She has the key." Cade studied her. "You're lying." "I'm not. My mother didn't trust banks. She made 2 copies. One in the lockbox, one with Mama Birdie. If you want the originals, you need her." It was a gamble. Jessie was betting that Cade was scared enough of failing his bosses that he'd take any chance to get those documents. The SUV changed direction, heading toward the hospital. Jessie's hand slipped into her jacket pocket, found the burner phone Ryder had given her last night. Her thumb found the single button programmed with his number, pressed it without looking. The phone was set to silent, but she knew it was calling. Knew Ryder would answer. Knew he'd hear everything. She just had to keep them talking. "Who gives you your orders?" Jessie asked. "Who's really in charge?" Cade smiled. "You'll meet him soon enough. Detective Voss has been very interested in meeting Evangeline Cole's daughter." Jessie's blood went cold, but she kept her voice steady. "He killed my mother. He gave the order. I pulled the trigger." Cade leaned closer. "You want to know what her last words were?" She said, "Tell my daughter I'm sorry. Sorry for what I wonder. Sorry for stealing from us. Sorry for thinking she could hide." Jessie's hands clenched into fists. "Sorry you'd come for me next." Smart woman. Shame she had to die. The SUV pulled into an industrial park on the east side. Abandoned warehouses stretched in every direction, monuments to Detroit's manufacturing past. The perfect place to make someone disappear. They dragged Jessie out of the vehicle and into a building with boarded windows and a collapsing roof. The air inside was thick with dust and decay. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, a steady rhythm, like a clock counting down to something terrible. "Sit," Cade ordered, pushing Jessie into a rusted metal chair. She sat. The chair was cold against her back, the metal rough with decades of corrosion. Jessie looked around, cataloging exits. One door they'd come through. Broken windows too high to reach. A catwalk overhead, but no way to access it without climbing. She was trapped. Footsteps echoed in the warehouse. Someone else was here. Someone who'd been waiting. Detective Harlan Voss emerged from the shadows, and Jessie felt the full weight of 5 years of grief and rage settle onto her shoulders. "Hello, Jessie," he said, his voice friendly in a way that made her skin crawl. "I've been waiting to meet you for a long time." "You killed my mother," Jessie said. Her voice didn't shake, didn't waver. She was done being afraid. "I gave the order," Voss corrected, exactly like Cade had said. "There's a difference. I didn't pull the trigger myself. I had people for that." He pulled up a chair and sat across from her, close enough that Jessie could smell the coffee on his breath. "You know, your mother and I were almost friends once. Before she started asking questions she shouldn't ask. Before she started digging where she didn't belong. She was doing the right thing." "The right thing," Voss laughed. "Kid, the right thing doesn't exist. There's just survival. Your mother chose to fight a war she couldn't win. I chose to be on the winning side, and here we are. You're not winning, Jesse said. My mother's evidence is still out there, and it's going to destroy you. These photocopies, Voss held up the envelope Kate had given him. Useless in court. We need the originals. Account numbers we can trace. Documents we can verify. And you're going to tell me where they are. I don't know. The slap came so fast Jessie didn't see it coming. Her head snapped to the side, stars exploding behind her eyes. Her lips split, filling her mouth with the copper taste of blood. Let's try again, Voss said calmly. Where are the originals? Jessie spat blood on the floor. I told you, I don't know. Another slap, harder this time. Jessie's vision swam. Your mother took a long time to die, Voss said conversationally. Kate here, he's not a great shot. Missing her heart by 3 inches. She bled out slow, knowing her daughter was watching, knowing there was nothing she could do to protect you. He leaned closer. Is that how you want this to end? You dying slowly while wondering if it was worth it? Jessie looked him in the eyes. My mother's death meant something. What will yours mean? Voss's expression darkened. You've got 5 seconds to tell me where those documents are, or I'm going to make you wish you'd never been born. 1, Jessie said nothing. 2. Her hand was still in her pocket, still clutching the phone. Ryder had heard everything. He was coming. 3. She just had to survive until he got here. 4. Voss pulled out a gun, pressed it against Jessie's temple. The metal was cold. Final. Kin. The warehouse door exploded inward with a sound like thunder. Motorcycles poured through the opening. Not 1, not 2, 98 steel hounds riding in perfect formation, engines roaring like the wrath of God made manifest in chrome and horsepower. Voss spun toward the sound guns swinging away from Jessie's head. Cade and his men pulled their weapons, but they were overwhelmed. Outgunned, 98-5 wasn't a fight. It was a massacre waiting to happen. The bikes circled the warehouse interior, forming a wall of metal and muscle between Jessie and her captors. Then they stopped. Engines cut simultaneously. In the sudden silence, Jessie could hear her own heartbeat. Ryder dismounted from the lead bike, walked toward Voss with the slow, inevitable movement of an avalanche. In his hands was a shotgun, and his face held all the fury of a father who'd failed once and refused to fail again. Get away from my daughter, he said. Voss pointed his gun at Ryder. This is police business. You're interfering with an investigation. You're a dirty cop who murdered the woman I loved, Ryder replied. The only thing you're investigating is how long you can live after I pull this trigger. You won't shoot, not with all these witnesses. Son, every person in this warehouse would swear I was defending my child. You really want to test that theory? Voss's gun hand shook. He was realizing too late that he'd made a fatal miscalculation. This wasn't a 14-year-old runaway he could intimidate. This was family, and family fought back. Jessie kicked out hard, her boot connecting with Voss's knee. He stumbled, cursing, and Jessie rolled out of the chair and ran toward Ryder. Strong arms caught her, pulled her behind the wall of Biker's safe. Cade raised his gun toward Jessie's fleeing form. Ryder's shotgun boomed. Cade went down screaming, his kneecap shattered into bone fragments and blood. His gun clattered away across the concrete floor. Anyone else want to try? Ryder asked. The other Viper enforcers dropped their weapons, hands raised. They knew when they were beaten. You're dead, Voss snarled. All of you, you just assaulted a police officer. I'll have every cop in Detroit hunting you by sunset. I don't think so. The voice came from behind them. Jessie turned to see Agent Caroline Stone stepping through the warehouse door, Agent Morrison beside her, both with FBI badges held high and guns drawn. Detective Harlan Voss, Stone said, you're under arrest for murder, conspiracy, corruption, and about 30 other charges we're still counting. Voss's face went white. You can't prove anything. These photocopies are useless. Who said anything about photocopies? Stone smiled. It wasn't kind. Agent Morrison held up a thick folder. We have the originals, Voss. Every single document Evangeline Cole gathered 14 years ago. Account numbers. Wire transfers. Names. Dates. Everything we need to prove you've been running money for the Viper Syndicate since 2010. That's impossible. The originals were destroyed. No, Jessie said, stepping forward. They were hidden. My mother was smarter than all of you. Stone looked at Jesse. Your mother sent those documents to someone she trusted. Someone she knew would keep them safe until you were ready. Someone who's had them for 8 years waiting for this exact moment. Jesse's mind raced. Someone Eva trusted. Someone who'd kept the secret. Someone who'd known Jesse would come eventually. Mama Birdie, she whispered. Mama Birdie, Stone confirmed. She turned them over to us last night, said Eva's instructions were clear. Keep them hidden until Jesse comes home. Then give them to the FBI and make sure everyone involved pays. Jessie felt tears streaming down her face. Her mother, her brilliant, brave mother, had planned for this, had trusted Mama Birdie with the truth, had left a trail that would lead Jessie home and bring her killers to justice. Stone's phone rang. She answered, listened, smiled. That was my director, she said, hanging up. Senator Garrett Blackwell was arrested 20 minutes ago at his office. 43 members of the Viper Syndicate are in custody. It's over. The whole organization is done. Voss lunged for the gun Cade had dropped. Morrison shot him in the shoulder before he got within 3 feet of it. Voss went down hard, screaming, blood spreading across his cheap suit. Add attempted assault of a federal agent to the list, Morrison said mildly. FBI agents swarmed in, cuffing Voss and Cade and the other Vipers. Reading rights, calling ambulances. The warehouse that had been a tomb moments ago transformed into a crime scene lit by the flashing lights of law enforcement vehicles pouring through the door. Jessie stood in the center of it all, surrounded by 98 steel hounds who'd ridden through the city to save her. Her father's hand on her shoulder, her family protecting her like Eva had always wanted. Is it really over? She asked. Ryder pulled her into an embrace that smelled like leather and motor oil and safety. Yeah, baby girl, it's over. You did it. You finished what your mother started. Jessie buried her face in his chest and cried. 5 years of tears she'd been holding back. 5 years of grief and fear and loneliness finally finding release. I've got you, Ryder murmured. I've got you, and I'm never letting go again. 3 days later, Jessie stood in the parking lot of Detroit General Hospital, watching Mama Birdie being wheeled out by a nurse who looked exasperated. I told you to rest another week, the nurse was saying. I've rested enough, Mama Birdie replied. I've got family waiting, and I'm not spending another minute in this sterile prison. Jessie rushed forward to help. Mama Birdie's color was better now, the pallor of blood loss replaced by her natural weathered tan. The gunshot wound was healing clean. How you feeling, Grandma? Jessie asked. The words still felt strange but good, like putting on shoes that fit perfectly after years of walking barefoot. Like I got shot, Mama Birdie said dryly. But I'll live. Takes more than a bullet to kill this old bird. A convoy was waiting, the black van that had become familiar. And behind it, 98 motorcycles, their riders standing at attention like an honor guard. Ryder appeared beside Jesse Phoenix at his side. Ready to go home. Home. The word still didn't quite fit, but Jesse was learning to wear it anyway. They drove through Detroit as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The warehouse district gave way to the industrial zone where Stillwater stood. The Steel Hounds Clubhouse. The place her mother had loved. The place that had been waiting for Jessie for 14 years. Inside the clubhouse had been transformed. Streamers hung from the ceiling, tables overflowed with food. Steel Hounds, members and their families, filled every corner, talking and laughing, and living the kind of normal life Jessie had thought was reserved for other people. What is this? Jessie asked. Welcome home party, Phoenix said. You're officially family now. That deserves celebrating. The party lasted for hours. Jessie met more people than she could remember. Bikers and their wives. Kids her age who treated her like she'd always been there. Old-timers who told stories about Eva, about the young woman who'd walked into their lives and changed everything. One old man, Marcus, with the scars, pulled Jessie aside. Your mama saved my life once. I was shot up bad, bleeding out in an alley. She found me, got me to a hospital, stayed with me the whole night even though she didn't know me from Adam. His eyes were wet. I'm alive because of her, and now you're alive because of her planning. That woman was something special. Yeah, Jessie whispered. She was. Around midnight, when the crowd had thinned and the music had shifted to something slow and sad, Ryder found Jessie standing alone near the door. You okay? He asked. I don't know. Jessie looked at him. I spent 5 years invisible, 3 months on the streets. I got used to being alone, being nobody, and now I'm somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, part of this huge family. It's a lot. You don't have to be anything you don't want to be, Ryder said. You can walk away right now. We'll give you money, resources, help you start over somewhere safe. No pressure, no expectations. Jessie thought about it, thought about running again. Finding a new city where nobody knew her name or her history. Starting fresh without the weight of family and obligation and love. But she thought about her mother too. About Eva spending 14 years protecting her, planning for this moment, trusting that Jessie would be strong enough to come home. I want to stay, Jessie said, but I'm scared. Of what? Of losing it again, of having a family and watching them die. I don't think I could survive that twice. Ryder knelt down so they were eye to eye. I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. Can't promise we'll all live forever. But I can promise that whatever comes, you won't face it alone. Not anymore. You're a Maddox now, and Maddoxes don't abandon each other. Phoenix appeared beside them, 2 bottles of root beer in her hands. She passed one to Jessie. He's right, you know. You're stuck with us now, little sister. Jessie looked at them both. Her father, her sister, her family. Okay, she said. I'll stay. The next morning, the full Steel Hounds membership assembled in the main hall. 98 bikers in their vests, standing in formation like soldiers. Jessie stood before them, nervous and overwhelmed. Ryder stepped forward, holding a leather vest. It was small, made for Jessie's frame with patches already sewn on. The Steel Hounds rocker across the back, the Detroit chapter marker, and in the center, embroidered in gold thread, a wolf's head identical to the one on her locket. This isn't because you're my daughter, Ryder said loud enough for everyone to hear. This is because you earned it. You saved Mama Birdie when you could have run. You faced down corrupt cops and criminals to finish what your mother started. You showed courage when most people would have hidden. And you proved that the blood running through your veins, cold blood, Maddox blood, means something. He held out the vest. Jessie Cole, we'd be honored if you'd ride with us as a prospect in the Steel Hounds MC. Jessie took the vest with shaking hands, slipped it on. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her, like she'd always been meant to wear it. The room erupted, 98 bikers stomping boots and pounding tables and chanting. Family, family, family. Jessie felt tears streaming down her face again, but these were different from the ones in the warehouse. These were happy tears, tears of belonging, of finally, after 5 years of being invisible, being seen. Mama Birdie wheeled herself forward, Phoenix pushing her chair. Come here, baby girl. Jessie knelt beside the wheelchair. Mama Birdie pulled her into a hug that smelled like leather and hospital antiseptic and home. Your mama would be so proud, Mama Birdie whispered, so damn proud. That night, Jessie found herself alone on the roof of the clubhouse staring at the stars. The same stars her mother had taught her to find when she was small. Orion the hunter, still chasing his prey across the sky, still refusing to give up. She heard footsteps behind her. Ryder climbed up, 2 cups of hot chocolate in his hands. He passed one to Jessie and sat beside her. Talking to her, he asked. Jessie nodded. Is that weird? No, I'd do it every night, have for 5 years. He looked up at Orion. Sometimes I swear I can hear her answer. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, father and daughter watching the stars and thinking about the woman who'd loved them both. What do you think she'd say? Jessie asked. If she could see me now. Ryder smiled. She'd say you did good, Valentine. You came home. You're safe. You're loved. And you made sure the people who hurt us paid for what they did. Jessie touched the locket around her neck. The secret message was gone, used to unlock the truth. But the wolf's head remained a reminder of where she came from and who she was. I miss her so much, Jessie whispered. Me too, baby girl. Me too. Phoenix's voice floated up from below. You two done having your moment because Mama Birdie made her famous chocolate cake, and she's threatening to eat the whole thing herself if you don't get down here. Ryder laughed and stood, offering Jessie his hand. You coming? Jessie looked at the stars one more time. Looked at Orion, still hunting, still fighting, still refusing to quit. She thought about Eva, about the mother who'd sacrificed everything to keep her safe. about the family that had waited 14 years for her to come home. "Yeah, Dad," she said, taking his hand. "I'm coming." The night Jessie Cole walked into the Iron Horse, she was a homeless girl with nothing but a backpack and a locket she didn't understand. She had no family, no future, no reason to believe tomorrow would be different from yesterday. 72 hours later, she'd saved a woman's life, discovered her father met her sister, helped bring down a criminal empire, and found a place where she finally truly belonged. Some people spend their whole lives searching for home. Jessie found hers in the most unlikely place, in the heart of a motorcycle club surrounded by 98 warriors who'd wept when they thought they'd lost their matriarch and who welcomed a stranger because she'd risked everything to save her. 3 weeks after that fateful night, Jessie stood before the full membership of the Steel Hounds MC, wearing her prospect vest. Not because she was Ryder's daughter, because she'd earned it, because she'd shown courage when most people would have run, because she'd proven that the blood running through her veins meant something. The room erupted in cheers. Bikers pounded tables and stomped boots. Someone started a chant that spread like wildfire through the crowd. "Family, family, family." Jessie looked out at the sea of faces, her grandmother beaming from her wheelchair, her sister applauding beside her, her father standing tall with tears in his eyes. And somewhere, somehow, she felt her mother watching. "You did good, baby. You found your way home." Jessie Cole had spent 14 years running from the pen. Now finally she was running toward the future, and this time she wasn't running alone.